Richard?
I would just quickly concur with that remark, and of course say that each organization is different, and that position of influence may be shared because the web team can be assigned or attached to ICT. It could be a branch of the executive office, or it could be within communication, or it could be our responsibility shared. But it is essentially the influence in deciding on common policies that is essential in that mix, whether it be on a GA resolution on accessibility, or an interagency project that requires open content, shared or common data exchange standards. We need someone from each organization that can make that decision, that can trickle down and make an impact within the different working groups or focus groups on whatever area of technology or communication they may be working on. So.
Okay, I think Chris had something he wanted to add, and then we'll take a question in front here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's not really excluding those people with enthusiasm, because I think that that's a very valid comment, that there are a lot of people, and in this room it's a very enthusiastic approach to the web. Yesterday on our panel we had NGOs, we had UNESCO, we had private sector, we opened up the room to discussion. There was a lot of interesting discussion. I don't think this approach is going to take that away. What it's saying is we've now reached a critical mass. We've had now 5 of these conferences, and it's now time to really get down and formalize our work in different areas. That means that there's still a role for everybody, and we're all going to be working on different things, continuing to exchange. But I think the comment Richard was making was basically we need some people with enough legitimacy to push what we need up to the very top of the United Nations to really make it legitimate. So they have to be people with enough clout, with enough, high enough in the strata, because we're in the United Nations, it's quite hierarchical, to really shake them up to the top and really bring all that excitement that we all have. And that means the role is still there for everybody, because we have to keep showing that excitement so they have something to show at the top. I think that was the point.
Maybe take one more question here in front, and then behind.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment that I fully agree that there's the reality of the very hierarchical system we work in, yeah. And it would be nice to see some more women.
Yeah, exactly.
But just one last thing. I think it's really, really important also for this group, whether it's at the IEA, we have a web steering group, which has started, it's incipient, and we just started recently. So it's interesting because it would be, that group would probably be feeding into whatever person, is appointed. It's a rotate. At the moment, we rotate the chair. We've had the same chair, but, it's only started recently. But I think what's really, really important also is to make sure that whoever person it is also very, very aware of programmatic aspects, and cluster approaches and UNDAF, and other things like that, because that would facilitate a lot if we actually had practical applications of whatever work we do. So that's just a comment. Thanks.
I think there was this gentleman back here who's been very patient. I ignored twice. And then, sorry. I skipped you, I'm sorry. I skipped you again, that's the second time. Please go ahead, and then the gentleman over there, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring in this concept of diversity. I'm Peter Delahaye from UNICEF in Bangkok. I think if you've got chiefs of webs in a steering group who are actually the crazy ideas persons of the organization, fantastic. If they're not, then I'm worried about the excitement, the energy, the enthusiasm, the multiple applications that we've just seen over the last 2.5 days, where they're going to go with funding, where they're going to go with open source sharing. I was struck yesterday by the 2-track presentations, because in Myers-Briggs terms, one was the Guardians of the House presentation, and the other was the Visionaries. And you've got to bring those 2 streams together. This conversation, this panel started out very much in terms of Guardians of the House. And I recognize in terms of hierarchy, that's important. But how are we going to coordinate and communicate our coordination on the multiple other initiatives that are so exciting. You've got to somehow, in this wrap-up session, you've got to accommodate that. That's your challenge.
Someone like to take that?
I would just say partially that the structure of the conference I don't think is representative of the enthusiasm in the room, that one is doing one and the other side of the house was doing a different track. I think that's just the structure of the conference, and it happened to work out that way. But I think also the community itself, I mean, we would have to rely on the community itself to have that enthusiasm and push those people, that person at the agency level, bottom up, to get more action. And it's an education, the way I'm looking at it. I mean, I've got to educate my senior manager. That's a big part of my job, is educating up. So they understand some of the concept and terminology that I use and the impact of what it can do and everything else and how it applies to UN mission, MDGs, and everything else. I mean, it's a real education, and I think that's where the community at large has to come up with that enthusiasm, all these crazy ideas and things, to have that bubble up. So when that focal person, or that point principal, whatever you want to call that one person from the agency, sits around at the steering level committee and has that discussion, I think those crazy ideas will come up. And I think the community at large will have a voice, certainly. Through the community, through as they do now, they will certainly have a voice. And even perhaps, not sure, but even perhaps as the community as one active person on the steering committee. So they would also promote different ideas up, different coordination, different concepts up, why we should do this, how we should do that, funding mechanisms, different ideas. So that may be a way to have that voice of the community at that level, at the same spot. Only as an idea. And I would use probably something like UNCG as an example, the United Nations Communications Group, that has principals from each agency. And there's a conference call that happens on a monthly, bi-monthly basis. And I would encourage everyone to find out who that principal is at the agency level, especially in the online, and sit in that conference call to take in. We had a discussion about YouTube the other week. And I was involved in it, though I'm not the principal. My head of comms is the principal. But I sat in on that to add my input into it, and I think everyone here could also do that. And that's how we can coordinate and get from the comms level, the heads of comms, the heads of web, in that same dialogue, whether it's on UNCG, which we possibly will be coordinating with, Web for Dev, IT Network, all the different other official agencies within the UN system.
Thanks, David. We're pressed for time again, so I'm going to just take two more questions. There's a gentleman that has a microphone, and then Mr. Khan, and then we'll try to wrap things up a little bit.